Hi, welcome to the GenAI Mastery course. The goal of this course is to take you from a beginner GenAI user to an expert GenAI user in 7 sessions. My name is Lucky from GenDucate, and I will be your trainer in this course. Let's dive in. So you've done session 1 already, and now you are in session 2. And hopefully the prompt engineering skills that you developed in session 1 you would have tried it at work now and with other things, and you would have seen the difference. So you're ready to crack on with the second part of the course. But in the first session, in essence, just talk us through what we've done already. In the first session, we focus on prompting generative AI tools productively and responsibly. So you want to prompt them in a responsible way, but to be more productive, to get a lot done in a short time. So what would take you hours and hours to do, say 10 hours, you can get it done in an hour. That's the goal. So we've learned how to prompt GenAI tools to do that in the first session. Now in this second session, you're going to learn how to use GenAI to exploit big data. And an emphasis here is the big data, because as you would know in your organization, it depends on the size also of your organization. Most organizations, they have a lot of information, a lot of data that are lying down there that they're not really using, or that they can't use because it's just humanly impossible to use them. That's where generative AI tools, where they can shine. The more information, the more data you give generative AI tools, the more you can get out of it, insofar as you can prompt it properly, which is what we're doing now. How to use prompting and different styles to get a lot of insight out of data or information. It's the second section in the 7 different sessions on the course, and you would have done the first session before this second session. That's how it's been planned. So for this second session, you're moving from a consumer of information to creating knowledge from information. There's a lot of corporate data lying down, or big data. So what you're doing here, you are exploiting all that amount of data. But how do you exploit it? That's what we are covering. And this session will help you to organize that big data, because if you want to get the best out of it, you should know how to organize it using generative AI. Some of these things that you can do with generative AI is just impossible. It's humanly impossible, or it takes ages and ages and ages of time. Whereas if you use the right instructions or prompting, generative AI can do it in 30 minutes maybe, or a few hours. Okay, and retrieving data. There is some sort of data or information that you want to retrieve. It's not humanly possible because of the amount of big data you want to retrieve it from. You don't even know where to retrieve it from. You might have 100 files and you're looking for specific data, specific information. You don't know which of them. That means you have to go through 1, 2, 3, 4. Whereas if you give GenAI the right prompt, it takes 30 seconds and you get it out for you. And then synthesizing data, that is combining different data to get insight or knowledge out of it. Again, if you have 200 files, you wouldn't even know which data to go through to synthesize if you wanted to do them manually. But if you give all of them to generative AI and the right prompt, it will do that for you. And then you can create more resources from your big data using generative AI. And all of that, you would maintain the right source of truth. What that means is that your information, the knowledge you're creating, the insight you're creating, or the information you are creating from this big data, it comes from an actual truthful source. It's not made up. This is what we're covering today. And what are the skills that you're going to develop as a result of this? We normally start with the first main one, so the semantic indexing. Because you're looking at many different types of big data. What that means is it would be in different types of documents. This is common in organizations. It might be in PDF, in CSV, in JavaScript, or JSON, and other format. But the first thing here is how to convert these different types of data into a suitable format that you can use. So you get all these different types of data, you convert it into a suitable format that you can use. And then once you've done the converting, you can then get insight out of it. So it's a process, but we'll start with the converting. we'll move on from there. And the second thing is basically you're training your GenAI to use only the information that you've given it. So it's the retrieval-augmented generation or the RAG. You're literally saying you can only do X, Y, Z because you need that also to get the source of truth. If you train your GenAI tools to only get information from a certain sort of number of documents or places, then you are sure that you can get truth, full information. For example, corporate information. You can only use corporate documents. You don't use information from the internet. So when you train your generative AI not to use information from the internet, or you set it not to use information from the internet, then you're good to go with RAG. And the other one, metadata synthesis. You have these different types of files, a lot of data, this big data, but you want to extract specifics. Like you want to group them by getting specifics like the titles or the tags to the data. But you don't know how to group them that way because you don't know what's inside. There's a lot of files. You've got more than 100 files, but you want to group them. For example, I just say the project ID, the date, the security level, all of that. But the only way you can do that is to check each file one after the other to group it. Whereas you have generative AI, you can use generative AI to do that in 30 seconds. So we're going to do that today. And the other part, because responsible generative AI is embedded a lot in this course. So we will talk about sensitive information in almost all the sessions. So we also look at how you can use generative AI to clean data and remove sensitive information before it's been used. Because that matters, because if you think of how many organizations they've got into big trouble because of something like that, using sensitive information. So it's really important to be able to clean data, and get sensitive information out of it. And the last bit is trying to use evidence. Again, like I said in the first session, we look at hallucinating in different ways. This session, we are still going to do that. So this time, we are literally preventing hallucination by trying to force GenAI to provide the source of core information. We started doing this in the last session, in the first, but now in this session, we're going to do more of it. So you, in very specific terms, you force GenAI to get your source. And without the source, it wouldn't be able to give you the information, basically. So it wouldn't be able to make up the information or hallucinate or lie. Okay, so those are the skills you're developing. But then what does that lead to? How do you know you're being successful? The first one is a zero hallucination threshold. So you have that confidence in what you've created, what you're creating using generative AI tools, because you've learned how to prompt them not to hallucinate. That's the main thing. But there are other things you're learning. There's a lot that you learn, but we're just focusing on a few. The second one is you can use Gen AI to identify contradictory information. So cross-file audit. For example, you have different files. And again, if you have more than 100 files, it depends on the context. It might be a marketing context. It might be marketing files, or it might be production context. There's a chance that the things that have been said in one file might contradict another. And this might be a problem when you're working with the different files for different projects or different contexts. So it's good to be aware of that first at the beginning, that, okay, with this file, we've done X, Y, Z, but these other ones, we're seeing this in our organization. This might put us in trouble in the future. Let's know first now contradictions that we have and then sort it out before going public. And the third one is, it's just categorization mostly. So it's automated taxonomy creation. This is a fancy way to say to categorize a lot of files, especially when you need to use a file urgently, but you don't know which one to use. They haven't been titled, they haven't been named properly. These are issues that people deal with at work. There's a lot of files, but they haven't been titled, or maybe you just got into the role and they've given you this data source, which files, and it's hard for you to decide what's in it in them. You can use GenAI to categorize them, because once they've been categorized with generative AI, then it will categorize them properly with the right heading and titles, the different categories of files. Then you can start working with them. This file is feedback from customers in this region, and this file is operation, and this one is technical information, all of that, and then you can work with that. And the other thing that you'll be able to do after this is getting the 100% accuracy, which people need. This is a sought after skill in the industry. Being sure that, okay, I've used generative AI to create this, but I'm sure I have a rest of mind that is 100% correct. Generative AI wouldn't do that on its own. It will hallucinate, but you have to make it do that. This is another big part of what you are learning today. And the last bit is a sensitive information. So again, we're coming up with a different way to avoid generative AI from using sensitive information to create an output, you see, or removing it. So these are the things that you would be able to do after this session. So let's dive in. The part one is the knowledge base. As usual, in the first session, we follow this process. So we look at a key term, what a key term is, and I'll just try to simplify it, and then we move on to the practice. So Retrieval-Augmented RAG is basically training your generative AI to respond to specifically given information. So it responds to specifically given information. It doesn't respond to other information. You see, and as usual, we have a scenario here. You see here, I'm going to use only a few documents as you would expect. I can't use 50 or 100 documents for this session. But then the process is what matters. Like I said in the first session, follow the scenario and then you can scale for your own. You can contextualize it to your own. Here, it talks about having dozens of PDFs, strategy docs, emails, different types of files and different types of documents. But you need a system. And from that system, you want to pull out something. And on this occasion, we're looking at specific milestones for phase 3. So you see at the beginning, you have all these documents. You don't even know which one to get the information from. You can either first organize the document, and then you can find it, or you can do both steps. Use generative AI to organize the document and find, which is quicker, and find the specific information you are looking for. On this occasion, the milestones for phase 3. And then you get the specific answer for the project. Now, this depends on different factors. First of all, being the number, how many files you're working with, and how specific the information you're looking for, and what do you need that specific information for, all of that. But what we've done on this course is to give you a template, almost a template to follow. So you have a scenario now, you know what the scenario is about. There are different stages in the scenario. First of all, you have so many documents, and you need information from them, but you don't know where to get it from. So basically organizing, and then before you find the information, and then use that information. So 3 layers here, which can be complex, but we try to simplify things on the course. So how not to do it, which is a beginner approach. As you see the prompt, upload the files, tell me what the milestones are for phase 3. Generative AI would be able to pick, if you give it all the files, it would be able to pick the milestone for phase 3. It would do that. But the problem is it would miss information in a way that it will present it that is the phase 3 milestones, that specific you're looking for. It will present it like that, and you wouldn't know. This is where it becomes a problem. You wouldn't know because you have 100 documents that it's working with. You probably wouldn't know how it's mixed the information from another phase. You're looking for phase 3 because it might be very similar. It would take information from phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, and bundle everything together and present it in a very nice way. And you read everything, you're like, yeah, that sounds about what I'm looking for. Because you don't know what's in the document. So don't do that. This is a disaster. In reality, this is a disaster because somewhere along the line, something is going to happen. Someone is going to find out and it becomes a problem. How do you do it to avoid that? Step 1, you can use any of the tools. You upload the files. It says dedicated knowledge folder here. The reason that word is used is because the organizing part, at this step, you would have done the organizing part already. Because that's a simple prompt. You're giving GenAI the files and say, organize these files we've done something similar in the first session. So you go back to that session when we did that. So you've already organized the files. So from all the different group, you have one called knowledge folder. So this is the one that you're using. And then before you do the prompt, so you're working with that folder, you either upload a folder. With Gemini, you can go straight to get it from your drive. So using that folder that you've already named, titled, you already have an idea of what's there because GenAI has already told you, from what we've done in session 1. Then you can use the prompt to retrieve. The keyword here is only. The reason being, you might have used other files with the same thread. So if you don't say only, it would pick suitable information from other files. So you want to be specific. There are only the uploaded files. Or even to sort of reinforce that, you want to add the names of the files. if possible, if they're not too many. Again, it depends on what subscription you have. Some subscription, they don't allow even too many files anyway. Then once you've given that, you say exactly what you want. In this occasion, chronological table of phase 3 milestones. If the date is missing, say TBD, do not estimate, don't lie. Again, this is another problem where the two can look at phase 1 of the project and phase 2 of the project and use that to estimate. So you can see just step 1 and step 2, a lot has happened already. You've already organized your file, you already have the title of the file, and then you're saying use only these files before you then ask of the specific thing you are looking for. When you follow those steps, you will get your specific, and then you reinforce and say, do not do X, Y, Z. Once that's done, you can then add more. You can do this in one go, like we're going to do because we're not using much files. Or you can do it in different goes. You can do step 1, you've already organized, and step 2, you can do it, and then after step 2, you move on to step 3. Or you can do it in one go. Again, it depends on the tool you're using. If it's Gemini or ChatGPT or Copilot, you work with your tools and you know what's most suitable. If you look at step 3, it says for every milestone list, identify which specific document, page number, the information was put from. You remember we've done this in session 1 before. It was a way of preventing hallucination. And once you have a prompt like that, you can see from the step 2 and step 3, there's a lot put in place already built into this prompt to stop generative AI from hallucinating. You can then add a responsible GenAI check. If you have old versions that you've worked with before, find a way to check that I didn't do it, I didn't use it. Okay. Having said that, let's practice what we just said. This document, this is for the session number 2. So you will have it with this session number 2. You have this document. So again, download it to be able to use it directly by copying and paste. But if you don't download it and you're using the way you've got a link, that means you have to type. In the first activity that we're looking at, the knowledge-based one, we have the scenario and first of all, how not to do it. On the left-hand side, as usual, I'll follow the same process. I'm going to use only 3 documents, but that's enough. But you will see the differences from even the few documents that we've used. So I will just upload a document now. So, as usual, we have pages that we're working with. The first one is for how not to do it, and the second one is for how to do it. That is the beginner and the expert. So the first one is for beginner, how not to do it, and the second one is for the expert, how to do it. Let's start with the beginner. I've already uploaded the document. You can see there are different files here, PDF and CSV, Excel. So I'm going to upload some files, tell me what the milestones are for phase 3. So I run that and I get the expert, which has already been done using only this. Here, you mention the file names, especially if you've used other files, you mention the specific file names that you want it to use. If you say only this uploaded file, but if you haven't uploaded the files before, now it depends on the subscription you have. You might have uploaded some files to other trade. Some of the tools, they will pick information from that other trade. So it's always a good practice to say only from these named files. If you can't name the files, then you group them with a title, like we did, the knowledge base or something, and then use that title so it will stick to that. This is the prompt we've talked about, and then we'll see the difference. First up, what you see here for the how not to do it, it did pick the date. You see it says from August 20 to 26 to November, phase 3 installation. It didn't give you a specific date, but it gives you the source because you haven't prompted it to do that. You just said, tell me what the milestones are. That one is not a milestone, so that one already is wrong. But then, phase 1, you have a date here and other information. Now the problem with this is it depends how many files you give. This happens from just the sources from one file. And what is this telling you is that if you have many files, you're using many files, the 50 files in a folder, it's working with that folder. First of all, you're going to have a lot more information under here, under each phase, and some of them won't be correct. I can assure you that. But this is just of one file, and you have similar to that already. So it's done that in a different part. Now, must be finalized and certified. If you look at the example, you will see that's not the case. It's not the most. So again, something has been made up there. But it looks as if that's the case. But if you go through the example, you'll see it's not. And then you get a table, a quick list of milestones. So again, as usual, some truthful information, some actual information that you need, and a lot that you don't need. And some of them are not even true. So that means editing, correction, and all of that. You have to do all of that, and you might spend ages doing that. Imagine this came out from only 3 files. If you had 50 files, trust me, there'll be a lot of editing to do. Whereas when you've prompted it properly, you see it went straight to the point, to the table. And then some notes that you might not even need because you already have everything in the table. So it gives you the date first because this is what you asked. If you look at the expert prompt, it goes straight to giving you what you're looking for. So first of all, you don't waste time reading what you don't need, like in the first one, and you don't waste time editing. You just go straight to the point. The start date, that's the date. No extra unnecessary information like it did for the other one. And then transformer, and everything goes straight to the point what you're looking for. Again, be mindful that we've used only 3 files here. If you were using 50 files and all of that, then it's a different ball game. It's a whole lot of information, but you would have the table concise if you've prompted it properly. Unlike if you haven't, you have plenty of information that you don't need, that you have to edit, and some of the information is not actually correct. And generative AI does something like it did with this information here. It wouldn't be a lie either. It wouldn't be true. It wouldn't be a lie. It would just make up something. That happens also. Sometimes it's just full-blown lie. Okay, but then you've seen the difference between when you're working with different files and trying to get specific information out. And I've talked you through the different process, the steps before you get to that specific information, which is you have to organize the files first and then the naming and all of that. Okay, so that's our first example of practice for this session. Okay, but before we go into the second practice, because I haven't said that in this session, I will just repeat that. If we go to the slide now, be mindful of the steps and the scenario, because it's the scenario that you take and make it your own specific workplace scenario. That's how you make the best out of this course. You take our scenario and make it yours and add more information and then follow the process, the steps. If you do both of them, you'll be fine and you'll be surprised how much improvement your usage of GenAI is. Okay, like I said in the first session, we have more than 20 different scenarios that you can adapt to your own organizational context that you need. Mindful of the scenario. The second part you're looking at is data train mapping. I'll break it down. So we're looking at semantic synthesis. Like it says, you're getting generative AI to connect the themes or the topics from different types of files or data set. So you have Excel spreadsheet, you have PowerPoint, you have Word, you have emails. So you have different data sets, different files, all scattered all over different places. But they're all for the same department or the same organization. And there are some certain themes that you're looking out for that you want generative AI to pull out from these files. If you were to do it yourself, it would take you maybe a month. It depends on how many files. If you have 100 files, you would know how long that would take. If you have 200 files, you know how long that would take. You need to know the process to work with the files. And once you know the process to work with the files, then it takes you maybe 30 minutes or an hour. You have the themes that you want. But what I've said might not be too clear until we do the activity. The activity makes it a lot clearer. We have another scenario here. We're focusing on feedback now because you need a theme or a topic from a contest, isn't it? So we're working with feedback contest. What theme are you looking for from the feedback? We're going to get to that. But then the feedback came from different regions. and different files formats, CSV, Word document, interview notes, PowerPoint, all of that. And your theme here is the pain point. What are the pain points that keep reoccurring? And a problem here with looking for things within different data sets is that you have to be very good in English language to be able to gather themes from different documents, because it wouldn't use the same terms or the same word. It wouldn't be said in the same way. It can be said in very different ways, but the theme remains. GenAI will pick that up quickly. You might not even think about it, you might even know. You might even have an excellent level of English language. In your mindset, you already have a limited structure of what that theme would be like. You're already looking for XYZ to be able to identify that this is the theme of what they are saying. This is the pain point. Whereas it might also be a pain point, but the way they've written it, you don't know, or you can't even do the thinking, because you're working with a lot of documents. You can't even do the thinking of, okay, this is a pain point. Whereas with generative AI, it picks it up, even though it's said in such a different way that, insofar as you've given it the right prompt, it will pick it up. So this is very important. And this happens a lot where information is being missed out on. And that information would help give good insight. Like what we are doing here is the pain point. It's good to know the pain point, because then it can be resolved. But if you don't know the pain point, or if you know some of the pain point, you might be wondering, why are our services in this area, why are they not accepted as these other areas? Because they've said it, the customers, they've said it several times. You just didn't get it the way they've said it. And the way, for example, we have EU here and we have the US here. The way that people speak, the way they use language, it's different. And with the EU, it might be a German, that's been converted to English for you, because you are probably in the US. So during that conversion process, something has been missed out there. But generative AI will pick that up. This is the thing. The pitfall, how not to do it: a simple prompt, summarize the feedback from these 3 files and tell me what people are complaining about. This is the problem, but it wouldn't do it properly. It would miss subtle information. It will just go to the obvious one. Whereas if you follow the expert process, the first step, you say to analyze the 3 files. So now in the beginner, you didn't say to analyze, you just say to look for XYZ. If you say analyze these 3 files, what you're saying is that even if it's something that's been said in a different way from what's been said in another file, but they are saying the same thing, but they're just saying it in a different way, take note of that. You're saying to analyze, you can use another term there if it's an evaluation or whatever you see. And then identify recurring themes. Yeah, this is very specific, what you're asking for. You're saying to analyze first and then recurring themes. Even if the terminology is between documents, just doing that one step from the beginner approach, you've made a big difference. It would pick the differences in terminologies, even though people are saying about something similar. Then you move on. Having done that, group it. And then provide the evidence. Again, adversarial techniques here, trying to stop generative AI from hallucinating. If you're saying, if you ChatGPT or Copilot or Gemini, you're saying, this is a pain point, I need an evidence from that, because I want to check myself if you've interpreted it properly. Even though I can't check the whole thing, but once you've done it, I want to review it myself to be sure that, okay, what they are saying actually is a pain point. Identify any region with a unique concern that is not shared among others. It depends on how many documents you have to work with the tool to do that. And your responsible AI check. If there's personalized information, remove them. This example that we're using here is very specific. Your job is to take this specific example and contextualize it. I'll give you some general information. The keyword. Do you want GenAI to analyze the information first, or to evaluate the information, or to compare? So you have to give it this keyword, and then how you want it to work with the document, with the evidence and all of that. Because you're working with a lot of documents, you need to be sure that this is correct. And what I've done in the past, what I do all the time, with the evidence, when it gives me the evidence, I just copy. I normally say with quotes, which is what's written here. So you just copy the code as the way you check, and then you can find the right document where it came out from. It's giving you the source anyways, so you just open that document, Control F, boof, and it's there. By the time you do it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, you find that it's always there. Then you can trust generative AI. Let's practice this. I already uploaded the different files. I'm using 3 or so here, like we did in the first activity. I'm going to run the first prompt, and then we'll look at the differences. You can see the 3 files there. It says to summarize the feedback from these files and tell me what's complaining about. I'll just run the first one, the basic one, the how not to do it, the beginner approach. It says to summarize the feedback from these 3 files and tell me what we're complaining about. Whereas the second one, the prompt is already created here. I will just copy it and put it. But something to be mindful of here, the extent of specificity here. Even though it's a small prompt, first of all, the ones that are in bold, it's being specific. There's more. I've just made this because they are clearer. First of all, you say to analyze. You're asking for something very specific, and then you say to identify, and then you say to group. You say to include. The more specific you are, the better when you're working with this sort of scenario. I'll run that while this is running. I'll go to the next one. So here, it gives you usable information, but sometimes it's general. This one, you might not be able to sort of get inside out of it because you probably know already, because you can compare your price to the customers or to the store. Again, general information that you already know. Growth tags, you already know that. So the first part didn't say much because it's saying the things that you know already. And then navigation on the website and user interface and all of that. Again, sort of sounds generic, isn't it? The first one is mostly generic stuff that you probably know if you know your organization. Whereas here, first of all, it goes specific. Now it's saying the same things, but how is this different from the next one? If you look here, all that information is added there. If you come to this one here, this is the advantage here. So it's followed the same step. It's gone through the step because you don't need all of that. You probably know that already. You don't need all of that. But you want to see how people are talking about it in the different files and the source. So there's a description. So you get a theme, you get a description, you get the evidence, and so on. Where? And then the different issues that were mentioned and that were not mentioned. Because everything is broken down. And it even gives that further. And you can see the clear difference between when it's giving you general information that you already know that you can make use of, and when it gives you similar information, but this time you can make use of it. In specific description here. For the price pressure and fatigue that it mentioned. Whereas here you don't have that. Because you haven't prompted it. So you basically, again, as usual, you got generic information that you can't make use of. Whereas when you prompted it properly, you got specific information that you can create insight out of. That's a big difference here. Having done that, let's move on to the next part of the session. Now we are in the third part of the session, and this session has 3 parts, 3 activities, unlike the first one that had 4. But these activities here, like you already see, they can take a lot because of the files and how much documents you have to work with. So be mindful of the scenarios and the expert progression that we followed. For this third part, there's a keyword metadata extraction. It sounds more than it is. It's actually using GenAI to identify similarities, or sometimes you can use it for differences from big data and categorize them. You identify similarities and then you categorize them into titles or tags or labels. You can see the thread that runs across all these activities that we've done. It's big data having this amount of information, files and all of that you're working with, but you don't know how to get GenAI to make the best out of it, which is why you're doing this session. The workplace scenario, another scenario for the same theme. You can see we have 3 different scenarios, but we're still working with the same theme. for this session. This is about cleaning up the shared drive. We have maybe 200 or more drafts. You need standardized tags like project name, document type, date, confidentiality level, and yours might be more specific so that it's easier for you to find information. For example, if you in your organization you have 5 different types of projects that you do, with the project name alone, you already know, okay, this is this type of project. This is project number 1. And another project name will tell you, okay, this is project number 3. The document type would also help you in terms of how to use it. But yours might be different. But the thing is the tagging basically, or the titling, or the labeling. That's the key thing here. So you have so much different files in your shared drive and so much that you want to organize them. As usual, you're looking at the beginner. Tell me what they are about so I can rename them. For 200 files, why not get a GenAI to name them instead? Or categorize them even better, like we're going to do now. GenAI cannot give you good tagging because of the way it's been created. So it's going to give you tagging with underscores everywhere, as you would see. But how do you do it? The expert progression. You define the tags because it can't give you good tags. So you define the tags. Project, document type, security level, effective date. We are using JSON here, but you can use different formats. You can use a table. I'll be talking about JSON and table. So you can use table if it depends on what you're doing. The reason we're using JSON here is because of the management system for the data. If you have the JSON code, it's a lot easier. You just put it in the management system. That's why we're using that example. But you can use, in your case, if you don't work with JavaScript and all of that, or you don't have sort of management system that work with JavaScript, you can use a table, a basic table. That's the most basic form. Get out of this. And in your table, everything is organized anyways. And you see. But I'm going to do it and you see. And step 3 is, again, sensitive information. So responsible generative AI, basically. Specific names, financial information, you mark them internal, so it's not exposed. You also have to check the different tagging, for example, security level, and see if it's followed what you've asked it to do. Let's go into their practice and see what happens. I already uploaded the files. I will just run into the prompt. So the first prompt, how not to do it, or the beginner approach. Look at these files, tell me what they're about, and rename them. Okay, that's that. And then the second, as usual, the steps I've already created down here. So I'll just copy them, copy this, and put it in the second Copilot. Let's start with how not to do it. Like I said in the message, you'll get some unnecessary information that you don't need. And that's the file name that you get. It becomes even more complex to find or to sort the files because you didn't give GenAI the right prompt. You just did something as usual, general, and gives you project underscore team underscore matrix underscore rows underscore, from information from all of that. You see, it's not useful at all. But then when you go here, when you've tagged it, the project, and you've given a field and everything, it becomes a lot clearer. There's a title, and it gives you specifics about what you mentioned. No HRO, no financial, it just gives you that. Basically, this is based on your prompt that it should make it internal. Whereas this other file mentions them. You see what happens here? It goes straight to the point and gives you what you want. I only uploaded 2 files. That's what it is for the 2 files that I uploaded. If you look up here, you see there are 2 files only. So if you're working with more files from a drive, maybe not uploading directly, but from a drive, and you have 50 files there, then you'll see how useful this is. Because it's named it and tell you the ones that are internal and the ones that are not, and you can create a table out of it. But we've done a JSON output here because of the management system. So all you need to do is just to copy and paste it in the document management system. and you have your document organized. So if you don't use document management system, put it in the table. The good thing is it would include all of that in the table anyways. You have the areas that you mentioned, the project name, the type of document, the security level, effective date. You have that in the table with that information there. But if you're working with a document management system, then the JSON output is it's better. Let's go to the rest of the session. Having done the 3 activities in this session, we'll focus for this session, specifically session number 2, how do we use generative AI responsibly, which is an emphasis on this course. We looked at 4 areas. When you're working with different documents and you want to ensure that you're using generative AI responsibly, what not to do, which is responsible Gen AI, and what to do. The first one is misinformation. Avoid misinformation, avoid getting wrong information from generative AI or from the big data that you have because you haven't prompted generative AI correctly. You avoid misinformation by feeding generative AI the right information during the prompting. That way, you don't even have to edit or change things as much as possible. The second part is trying to safeguard privacy or sensitive information. This is a big area. You have to be conscious of what you feed into generative AI. Sometimes you can't because you're working with files in this session. That means you need prompts. Like we did in the last activity, you have to mark it internal and you can use other prompts to ensure that you've safeguarded privacy and sensitive information. In some of the tools, especially the paid one, you can set them to work with only internal documents, so not the internet. And the third one is ensuring that there's no hallucination, that the information is truthful. It hasn't said anything about a document or a file that is not true. You use adversarial techniques and so on, like we've done in the practice. And the final one is the source is used. You're directing generative AI to use the right source. For example, like I said, keyword reliance. To not take the wrong document and put it in the wrong place, you sort of get it to put a source where you got it from. You control that. Even though you're working with 200 files or more, you ensure that it's embedded into the prompting. It picks files from the right place and categorizes them in the right place. And you take it from there. So these are some of the things you would think from this session about using generative AI responsibly. And then what happens from here, like we do in every session, is self-assessment. And you start with the scenarios. The scenarios is how you take this to your own individual role on the task that you do. So you identify the workplace scenarios that are similar to yours. Some of you might not be working with a lot of files, or some of you, this is what you need because you work with a lot of files and you have issues with files. So you adapt the scenario, tweak it around to fit your own specific sort of activity that you do, your task and so on. Then I did the expert progression, because the expert progression that we've used on this course is known in the first 2 sessions now. It's sort of brief, so you can edit it and add more information that is suitable to you, but follow the process. If you stick with the process and add more information, you'll be good. And after doing that, then you can prompt generative AI using all of that you've done. You've edited the scenario, so you made it your own scenario, and then you've edited the progression. Then you can compare what you used to do before. Obviously, if you used to do it manually before, it's just the time. How long it took you to do something using generative AI, how long it took you to do manually. It's quicker using generative AI if you know how to follow the steps. And the good thing is this is a video, so you can follow the steps of what we've done. So our next session is about communication. It's about how we use generative AI to work with high volume communication. And this is common in the workplace. Some of you might have been in a Zoom meeting or a Teams meeting with 50 other people, and there was a transcript from the meeting. And in that meeting, a lot was said. The meeting maybe lasted 2 hours. In that 2 hours, the useful information from that 2 hours might be only 20 minutes of the 2 hours. So many things were said that are just not necessary. The next session is how do I get useful information that I can make decisions on from that. And some of the things you're looking at is transforming long meetings into specific intelligence that you can make decisions on. The same with inflowing inboxes. You might have 15 messages about the same thread that has 12, 20, 13, 40 messages, and then you have a few of those threads. You might have 20 threads like that. It's just impossible for you to work with manually. You take all of that high volume of information, bring out actionable, important insight from it to use to make decisions. So that's what we are doing in the next session. But thank you very much for staying to the end of this session, and I'll see you in the next session. Have a good day. Thank you.